Hey there, we're Kurt and Kristen Luidhardt, and welcome to the Liberty Spenders podcast. With our deep expertise in political strategy and a passion for the politically conservative and faith-based market, we're here to guide you into tapping into this $5 trillion opportunity. Having worked on high-profile campaigns like Donald Trump's 2016 run, we're excited to share our data-driven insights and the 5 Ps process to help you authentically connect with this loyal and lucrative audience.
Join us as we explore real-world examples, reveal game-changing strategies, and provide you with the tools to accelerate your business growth in this powerful market. If you're ready to unlock the potential of the Liberty Spender audience, hit that subscribe button and let's embark on this journey together.
Welcome to the Liberty Spenders podcast. We are Kurt and Kristen Luidhardt, your hosts and co-founders of the Prosper Group, an agency that's helped elect 14 governors, 15 U.S. senators, 1 president, and over 100 members of Congress. And now, in addition to helping political candidates get elected, we're also helping your business get elected by teaching you how to connect with this and market to this high-value audience we call Liberty Spenders. Liberty Spenders is a group of up to 40% of the country who are politically conservative or faith-motivated consumers who are looking for businesses that align with their values.
Today, we have a special guest, Paul Dietzel, founder of Anedot. Anedot's a great company that we've done a ton of work with over the years. They target both the politically conservative and faith-based markets. His clients are political candidates and organizations, plus churches and other religious nonprofits. Paul's company's headquartered in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I also know Paul's a former U.S. congressional candidate in the 6th Congressional District, Louisiana, which feels like a decade ago. When was it that you ran down there, Paul?
It was a decade ago.
Oh, I was
He's
right.
wised up since then. That's what's important.
And we've known you. I felt like we knew you since you started Anedot, but maybe not if you started it before you ran for Congress, because I think when you ran for Congress is the first time you hit our radar. I might be wrong. But we've certainly worked with you for a long time, Paul. And you've grown a really fantastic company in this time. I wondered if you knew how many customers you've served these days since Anedot launched.
Yeah, so since 2010, so we started in 2010, about 4 years before I ran for Congress. But we've served more than 30,000 organizations since 2010, including Focus on the Family,
Wow.
First Baptist Dallas, Pathway to Victory, like 95% of the United States Congress and the U.S. Senate. And also since 2010, we've actually served, if you're specifically looking at political, we've served more state, county, and local political campaigns than anybody in the political market.
Wow.
We love that about you.
So maybe just for the uninitiated, tell the audience, what does Anedot do? What's its value proposition, just so they understand it?
Yeah, so Anedot, just to get the initial piece out the way, because most people see the name and decide whether they should say Anedot or Anedot. But it's the anecdote, right, is that it's the antidote for donations. And if you take the word antidote, A-N-E-D-O-T, and you rearrange the letters, it spells donate. So using the long O from donate, carried that into antidote, even though if you just read it phonetically, it looks like it would be Anedot. So it's Anedot, and we serve churches and ministries, political campaigns as referenced, nonprofits, universities, even seminaries like Reformed Theological Seminary and others. And we basically provide fundraising tools, so donation processing, page management, page building, the ability to create events and sell tickets, or maybe sell merchandise for nonprofits specifically, not for profits. And really kind of give organizations kind of an all-in-one tool to be able to manage their donations, right? Because if you're a nonprofit, even your store and your ticket sales and stuff like that, it's still technically kind of you're still donating, right? You might just be getting something in return.
Yeah, and we love that because we've seen you build onto this platform over the years. Like we said, we've been working with your company for a long time. And so I know how passionate you are about adding value, about delivering to your audience, about just being a company of service to your customers. And so what we've been telling people who market in the space is you have to be passionate about what you do, passionate about your customer. And so I love hearing people's origin story, what motivates them. So tell us a little bit more, what inspired you to start Anedot?
So I was living in California at the time, in Southern California. I was also attending Pepperdine at grad school. Had a venture services company because I didn't have any money. I had to give the next best thing, which was my time and things that I had learned. So we did everything from on-site events, producing commercials, raising capital, building out websites, writing software, and building out platforms. And really, during that time, the 2009, 2010 timeline, I realized that every customer that I had ever worked with, whether it was a church, a political campaign, a nonprofit, a university, all of those organizations were continually raising money. And especially at that time in the 2009, 2010, it was really complicated to get set up with a donation page, get set up with all these different things. And even if you had an easy way to get a donation button on your website, if you wanted to tie that to what was happening in person, on like at an event or something like that, now you have two systems. And if you wanted to sell merchandise, now you have three systems. And if you want to if you want that to go into your CRM, now you have four systems. And what we found too from very early on, we really believed in data portability. We really believed in data privacy. We wanted people to be able to make choices. We didn't want people to be forced into, specific products that we had or that other people had. And so from day one, we actually created almost like an internal integrations team where we would build out integrations effectively to anybody, so that as an organization came and used the platform, we would push that data out to wherever they wanted it to go. Because at the end of the day, it's their data, right? So from day one at Anedot, we were big advocates on data, not only privacy, but being able to port your data or push your data to wherever you wanted it to go, so that you could be more effective as a not-for-profit organization.
Yeah, it's like, say that out loud for the people in the back. It's your data. It's kind of a big deal in this day and age where that's an outlier, right?
Yeah, I think, we want communications from people and organizations that we want communications from, right? I personally am unsubscribed from every list, every church, every ministry, even ones that we donate to. I stay actively informed, right? So if there's something going on, I know it's going on. I don't need to be messaged about it. I certainly don't need to be texted about that the U.S. Congress, the halls of Congress are going to light on flames if I don't give $5 by midnight. And so that's always been a big priority for us. And also too, when we get a lot of inbound donor phone calls, emails. I've even gotten letters in the mail. I'm not sure how they got my personal address. But we get so many inbound donor messages and communications, and we have a special team that handles donors and works with them and makes sure that they're taken care of. But when a donor calls in, or even somebody that's maybe not a donor on the platform, maybe they've donated on another platform, we still do our best to make sure that they're taken care of. And we're like, well, listen, we can't find you in our system, but we see based on FEC or based on whatever that you made a donation over on this other system, right? And so we usually try to point them in the right direction, connect them with an email or whatever. And then also too, when people, because the complaints definitely come in, when people send in a message saying, oh, well, why am I on this email list, or why am I getting text messages? And so we try to coach them through, because we're like, hey, look, we're in the same boat. We get messages from people out there we've never donated to, that we don't even use the same platform. Like, it's not even using Anedot, right? Like, it's using a different platform. We're like, how am I on this list? And so we try to coach them through that and make sure that they have the resources that they need. And if we have some contact, which at this point we have connections and contacts with nearly every political organization, ministry, church in the United States, we do our best also to reach out to that organization. Hey, look, this this person really doesn't want to be on your list, right? And try to get them removed. So that's just some of the behind the scenes stuff that we try to do just to be a good business in the market, and for not for profits as well as the donors, because we see it's not just about the organizations. It's also about the donors that are trying to make an impact, and they want to be able to give wisely without being bombarded, I guess. I don't know. without being annoyed, right? So
that exercise that you were talking about, going past what certainly would be required of you to answer questions from a potential donor, point them to somebody else, talk to a candidate that may not be a client of yours, and inform them that somebody's reaching out to you. That's certainly a part of, it's really kind of going an extra mile. Certainly nothing required of you. I know you're a person of deep faith. We talked about that when we were connecting just a week or so ago. Is that part of the reason you like your motive? Is that part of your motivation to go the extra mile, or is that more of a business decision? What would you say?
Yeah, I think everything in my life is rooted in faith, right? So my faith in Jesus Christ and just that is, it can't be separated from anything that I do. And I tell people that we hire, not all of our employees are Christians. We have some employees that are Christians, but I say the same thing to all of them. And I don't discriminate based on that, right? Like, I don't discriminate based on anything, but I don't discriminate in what I say, right? I say the same thing regardless of who I'm talking to. And I would say that, yeah, we want to care for people and love people and take care of them regardless of what we're getting out of it. We have plenty of, I'm not going to name states, but we have plenty of business that makes us zero money. In fact, probably loses us lots of money. And I personally advise various people across the country and government agencies and others, and we do that for free. We just are trying to help and trying to make everything better across the board. A lot of times the intent with government advising, though, is to rein them back and say, you should do less.
Right.
You should do less. We don't think this is a good idea. You should walk back on this. But yeah, I would say yes.
And I also think that authenticity, right? If your customers are obviously a lot of them are political candidates. That's how we know each other.
Right.
Many of them are churches, religious nonprofits, and there's some authenticity to you're living that life. And I suppose that impacts then as you're doing outreach to those kinds of customers, they want to see somebody who they think really believes in what they're doing. They're not just accessing them because they're in a good audience to market to or good customers for you to have, but because you truly believe in the cause. So I imagine the benefit there is there's alignment between your business and the values of your customers too.
It's much easier to live your life and be true to yourself and go after things that actually mean something to you than it is to fake it. It's much harder. It's much more stressful to fake it. I think one thing as a little boy growing up, my grandfather was a football coach, won a national championship, was the coach of the year, won all kinds of awards. And he always taught me, right, that integrity is doing the right thing even when nobody's looking. And so I think that's what we really try to instill in our team. It's like, look, it doesn't matter if anybody ever finds out about it. We don't do things because people are going to find out about it. We do things because they're the right thing to do. And so that carries over in everything that we do with Anedot. We've always done our best. And obviously sometimes we fall short and we do our best to apologize when we do, but we do our best to do that and to be true to who we are as individuals, but also to who we are as a company, because each of the people at Anedot help kind of make up this fabric that is what the world knows as Anedot. We have a lot of people. I mean, I think it's like 92% of our business is referral business.
Wow.
That's incredible.
We don't, up until actually last week, we didn't have anybody in what would be considered a sales role. We now have an account development specialist who can handle inbound leads. But up until about 2.5 years ago, I believe, or maybe 3 years ago, we didn't have anybody in marketing either. It was a second thought. We were very bad at telling people about what we had. We were very good at building stuff that could help people. But a lot of people 3 years after we released them, be like, we didn't know you had that. Why didn't you tell us? We were like, well, and so it's
Well,
kind of an amusing, but now we have an excellent, what we call our acquisition team, but excellent in marketing and advertising and SEO and all of those things. But it helps that they had a 12-year track record in domain rank and all these things of just excellence, that now they get to do all the fun stuff with content and with the ads and all the different things. And it's set up on this mountain of customer referrals and customer goodwill. And that, a lot of it came from back in 2011, 2012, which started a multi-year process for us, is that I actually drove across the country to like 40 something states. I think that's how I met you guys originally in person, right?
Yeah.
And I like cold called people.
We were doing the same thing. But
yeah.
Continue.
So, and I was like cold calling people, and I was going to sit down with CPAs and accountants and different people. And somebody in my office was like, they're like, hey, we talked to these people, but they were like, wait, what? The CEO's coming to town? Like, because it wasn't, I was just going to visit with customers and visit with people that had either used us in some way before, or maybe they had peripheral knowledge of us, but didn't really fully know what we did or why we did it. And so I think that's been really, really useful. And it was just me being authentic and me going and building relationships and caring for people. I wasn't doing it because I even thought that I was going to get anything in return. Up until a few years ago, we actually had actively, and we still have most of these that use their accounts, but we had actively in the political market, we had, I think it was like 44 or 46 state parties were using the platform. Mm-hmm. And we still have a large number of those that still use it for a lot of things that you might not even see. But it was interesting, right? Because I think anybody that works in politics knows that state parties aren't making us money.
No, right. No.
And so I'm kind of speaking more to that fact, is we don't always do things because it makes us money. Our intent from the very beginning, whenever I first started the company, was to make a platform that, regardless of what zip code you came from, regardless of what background you came from, regardless of how much money you had, if you were a 100-person multi-million nonprofit, or if you were a startup campaign that had no money and were running for city council, that everybody would have access to the best fundraising tools available to anybody. And so I believe that's what we've really been doing the last 14 years.
Well, and there's a lot to unpack there. And I just want to back up for a second, because I didn't want to interrupt your flow, but there's so much value in what you were saying about being authentic and what you were hinting at, Kurt, because when you talk about marketing and what we're describing, because our journey, our business journey was somewhat similar. We've traveled over 1 million miles. We drove across the country. We had clients all over the place. And that's how we built our business as well, was just through relationships and referrals. And so that really resonates with me. And I think it's important, because even though we're talking to people about this Liberty Spenders audience and our 5P process, and of course there's a lot of advertising that goes into what we often recommend, what is incredible about this, our philosophical approach that I think you've just showcased here, is that when you have that passionate story, when you have a values alignment, people can feel that, they can sense that, and it doesn't have to be on faith, but just your passion for serving your customer and knowing what they need and trying to be there to give them what they need, not what you want to give them, but what you actually feel the customer would value and what would help make their lives better. When you're doing that, you don't need as much, right? Like, that's the whole point, is that when you can connect on those things that really matter, and you know your customer really well, and you figure that out with your traveling, it just takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. And so I just love that. And I think it just is important enough to pause and emphasize that point, because I think so many customers and of ours and clients and and brands are thinking they're only thinking about the marketing budget and they forget about referrals, right? Referrals, testimonials. How can you leverage the happy customers you already have? That's
Right.
tremendously powerful.
Well, and
In
anybody
terms of
that's
dollar
starting
for
a new
dollar.
business, I
So
mean, the most challenging customer is the very first one. After you get the first one, you can learn
exactly.
from it. You can expand on it. You can ask them if they know anybody else that's in a similar circumstance that could use the product. And I mean, I know that you all, not to speak for you, but I know you all like us. We've certainly run into business prospects where people will inbound or whatever. We'll do a demo and we're like, this is just not really a good fit for you. Like, we would love to take your money, but like it's really just not a good fit, and it's really almost better to deflect or defer those people or refer those people elsewhere than to try to do everything, because otherwise you end up in this really hard relationship where you almost kind of are
Mhm.
begrudgingly doing something that is outside of your scope, and they're not getting everything that they really need and want. And so both parties are unhappy. And it's similar to how we actually make hires at Antidote.
Right.
Whenever we hire people, we're looking for people that are not only a good fit for Antidote, but to make sure also that Antidote's a good fit for the person. Because as I tell people in the interview process, I truly want people to be wherever, whether they believe in God or not, I want them to be wherever is best for their story and for their life and their career and what's going to be most meaningful to them, in their journey. So, and that might not be Antidote.
Right, right. Well, and you're really doing everyone a favor, and that's really important in B2B sales, especially right where you're going in, you're talking about product development or something, and you're trying to make sure there's a good fit because you want it to be a profitable relationship where everyone's happy. Because again, that's what leads to those referrals and good reviews, and all of those things. So if you start off at a bad place, it's not likely to get better from there. So you're like you said, you're doing yourself a favor just
And I
being
think
honest about that.
trust is
So
one of the most important things that you can build in a business, right? That, I think, if you were to synthesize down to a single word of what has made Antidote successful, other than God allowing it and God blessing us as a business for trying to do the right things, I think if you were to synthesize it down into one word, it would be trust. I think that people trust us. Now, whether they can always use us might not be in their ability to make that choice. It might be somebody else's choice. It might not be their choice. But I think whenever people have the ability to choose us, they generally will, because of trust and because we have a long track record of being trustable, right? Being trustworthy, and providing what we say we're going to provide, and not trying to oversell something.
I think you may have answered this question already, but for a lot of folks, particularly people starting a business and maybe doing B2B, or maybe they have a similar client avatar, thinking about how do you make those initial customer and client contacts where was it really a lot of just you getting on the road and saying, I'm going to stop in and see potential prospective customers? Did you hit some trade shows or some events, or how did you find them when you still were in those first few clients that before you had a big deck of them
Yeah,
for
for sure.
referrals?
I mean, I think early on it was definitely calling a few friends and family even, and people that I'd been connected to and worked with before. In our use case, right, with Antidote, there's virtually every single person that you could encounter in a day could be impacted by Antidote, because anybody that I come into contact with might have an organization. It might be a church, it might be a ministry, it might be a campaign, it might be a parent teacher association, it might be a neighborhood association, it might be literally anything. But if you're not in that camp, right, you might be a person that donates to one of those organizations, right? You might be a person, especially
Right.
because we have lead pages where you can submit information, which is a completely free product like the rest of it. You might just be a supporter, and you might not yet be a donor. But that's where the software can help as well, because you can get in as a lead, and then as long as you have the right team or external team, like Prosper or whoever you're working with, then you can slowly build the relationships as an organization. And I'm speaking nonprofits, right? And campaigns maybe, but you can convert them from supporters to donors, even if it's $5, $10, whatever. And so I think that initial business was really hard. One anecdote was I had reached out to the governor of Louisiana at the time, because I had actually been involved in a college organization that we referred a lot of volunteers, probably referred over 1,000 volunteers at the time to that governor, to help them get elected. And anyway, they're like, well, who uses you? And I'm like, well, I was kind of hoping that you would be like one of the first, right?
Right.
And that didn't go through. It wasn't.
Right. Somebody has to be. Will you please?
And so it was funny because that governor actually didn't get on the platform for like 3 or 4 years, and it wasn't because we reached back out. They actually came back and signed up themselves on the website for free because they had started seeing a bunch of other people across the country use it. And so when we started, and for the first few years, I mean, we went and talked to every city council, every I don't know, county commissioner, all the different people, right? Sheriffs and stuff like that. And interestingly enough, we had a lot of business early on, especially, and even still today, that people in the political industry and also our nonprofits and ministries would start in one position, right? They would start as like a state rep. Not that I'm endorsing that you should just live a life in politics, because that's a whole different topic. But they became a rep, then they became a senator, then a state senator, then they became a congressman, then they ran for U.S. Senate, and they stayed with us the entire time for like 8 years. And same with ministries. We've had a lot of new ministries come onto the platform, like Trail Life USA and others, that they actually the head of it, or the people in development, had actually worked with us with their previous organization that they had served. And then when they came into the new organization, they're like, dude, we've got to use this. This is like, I know how to use it. And it's easy and it's inexpensive. It's less expensive than anybody else because they actually control the processing and the platform all in a single place. They don't have to pay out somebody else under the hood. And so that's been huge for us because, we'll get an inbound lead. We're like, where did this organization come from? And they're like, oh, wait, that person worked over here like 4 years ago. And that happened to be a nonprofit that had previously used us. So that's been interesting kind of to see the connection points. I would use the word connect the dots, but I don't want to lead anybody to say Anedot. So I try to stay away from that.
Well, and it's that power of your concentrated market, and knowing that and being stable. And I think for anyone who's listening right now, and if you have a B2B, because we're going to talk a lot from people that are B2C and have products that they're selling to the general public, but in a B2B environment, it's so powerful because that one sale doesn't have to be one sale, right? It can be a long-term relationship, and it can survive that client and become more as the people that are engaging with whatever that product or service is goes to their next gig, and hopefully they take you along for the ride.
And I was going to say too, Kristen, like for instance, right? Because I know I'm talking about Anedot, or I'm talking about technology, but let's say I was starting a business in construction, and I was going to become a contractor or a general contractor, and and obviously there's relationships there, right? So now, okay, well, I'm going to call my friend that's a painter, and I'm going to call my friend that's whatever, and I'm going to build up these great resources that I can then go out and provide a really good service. And I think the key is that what's the old phrase, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. And I think that's true, right? I think that it's not just, I think part of the trust factor is not trying to overcharge people, is trying to make a reasonable or healthy profit or a healthy margin, but then quality, right? I think that people are kind of sick of low quality stuff. I mean, obviously, like sometimes you just need to, right? We're about to have our 5th child under 6, right? So there's some stuff that we're just like, hey, look, we just need to go over to Costco and just get it, right? And but like, I think that's a part of the trust factor too, right? Is providing not only a good product or a good service, but at a price that, if people were to be able to see under the hood or see behind the curtain like Wizard of Oz, that you wouldn't be embarrassed by it, right? That you wouldn't be able to, that they would say, oh wow, they're actually treating us really well. Not that you need to tell them that. You don't need to tell them that. But if they ever found
Right.
out, that they'd be like, wow, they didn't even tell us that, and they were doing us right the whole time. And I think that kind of ethos, or whatever you want to say, right, is really critical for people that are looking to start businesses. Because what I've found is the entrepreneurs and the people that start businesses that maybe go in with less than honorable motivations, or they're being based more in just purely, how do I make more money? I'm just going to do this because I'm going to make a lot of money. I have historically never found those to be very successful. Now, sure, there's the outliers, but generally speaking, I've never found that to be successful. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, it catches up with you. And customers can feel that, I think. Or, they'll understand, right? If there's inflation and things in the supply chain shift, you need to increase pricing. But man, if you put your attention to streamlining or finding ways to be more efficient, and that just goes such
Yeah, there's a huge market
so,
that'll pay for quality. So I'm not saying if you're offering a quality product that you shouldn't charge for it. You should absolutely charge for it. I'm just kind of touching on the point that, you can do really well without just going crazy on people and just, charging ridiculous amounts of money for stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's an example of what you've talked about. It's this doing what you think is right, following values, feeling good that your business is being honorable to your faith. And we just have maybe a few minutes left. And you and I had a fascinating conversation last week about this passion you have for home church, home churches, having a church in your home. And I thought, I know it's a little off the business topic, but I think I want to talk about that maybe a little bit just before we finish up, and have you tell a little bit about the passion you have for it, because I totally bought into it. My wife and I, it's not quite the same thing, but we are part of a small group at our church, and it's such a fundamental part of our faith to have that tight-knit community of people that we're growing together with. And I've been impacted recently about, there's a lot to be said in scripture to say you really can't grow in faith the way Christ designed without
relationship,
friends and being on a fellow journey with them. And so this home church thing I found interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for us, for my wife and I, everything it ties back to kind of a fundamental identity, right? The scripture talks about identity all throughout. And whenever someone becomes a Christian, the scriptures say that they become a new creation, right? The old is gone, the new has come. And so we kind of look at it and we're like, okay, look, if we believe these things, then we want to live them out, and we want to live them out with other people that we can be in daily fellowship with, not just seeing them once a week or not just seeing them once a month. Certainly not criticizing meeting once a week, because I think that's great. Meet once a week for sure. Meet once a month. Great. But I think from our standpoint, we were looking at it and we just wanted more. We wanted to be, we wanted like a Bible study or a people group or a home group or a small group or whatever. But we wanted it to be the thing, not the side thing, but like the thing, right? Because we started looking in the book of Acts and we look at the early church, and they met from home to home. And you see also in the early church, right? Obviously, a lot of Jesus's early followers were Jewish. He came first to the Jew and then to the Gentile. And so you have a lot of the early followers that they still observe the Sabbath, which was at that time the Saturday, right? And so like you think about it, they're going to temple. But if you look in the scriptures, the disciples, especially the Jewish disciples, after their conversion to Christ and after they started following Christ, they still went into the temple on Saturdays because they wanted to go back to their fellow brothers and sisters that were Jewish and be like, look, the Messiah has come. He is here. He's right here. Look at all he has done and look at what he has allowed us to do. We're literally casting out demons and healing the sick and making the lepers cleansed. and all these things. And then on Sundays is when they fellowshipped. They got together and they broke bread home to home, and they took communion together, and all these things. And so, but then when Jesus died on the cross and rose again, Jesus was Lord of the Sabbath. No longer did we need to necessarily set aside a specific day to rest, because in Christ and through the Holy Spirit, we can find rest every single day, every single night, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We don't need it's similar to prior to Jesus, you would have to go to temple. And there was this, relationship there that you had to go through the priest. But Jesus came, and when he rose again, the curtain was split in the temple. And it signifies that there's no longer that barrier, because at the beginning of creation, Adam and Eve, that was what God wanted all along. He wanted right fellowship with humans. He created humans to have dominion over the earth in Genesis 1:26, I believe. And in the Psalms, it talks about the heavens are the Lord's, but the earth he left to man. And so, when we look at it, we're like, okay, like, what does it look like to actually be the church? What did Jesus actually say in Matthew and Mark and in the different scriptures? And that's kind of where we are right now. We love all of our different brothers and sisters and the different denominations and the different church buildings and the different things. But we kind of look at it in similarly to Francis Chan and the We Are Church movement up in San Francisco, that it's like, we are the church. I don't need to go anywhere. And I know that can easily be construed as, oh, well, you stay at home and you don't go to church. And we had to get over that fear of man, because am I here to please man, or am I here to please God? Because if I'm here to please man, then that's not what I'm going for, right? Because it's no longer me that lives, it's Christ that lives in me. And I no longer walk by the carnal mind, I walk by the spiritual mind. And so everything that I do has to be measured based on that lens. And so I joke with people, we just got a little King Charles Cavalier puppy who's about 4 months old. And every morning at like 4 and 5 a.m., I go open his little crate, and he like jumps out and like wants to lick my face and all this stuff. And that's how I feel every day going out and just seeing people. I want people to be free. I want people to be free of anxiety, free of fear, free of all these different things that plague people on this earth. And that's what we're trying to do, right? So, I'll just say too, if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm always happy to pray for people. If you need healing, if you need deliverance, if you need anything like that, or if you just need somebody to pray for you, my information is very easily found on the internet, and I'm always happy to do the work of my Father. So,
yeah,
I love it.
Well, I'll tell you what I loved, and I think maybe we call it, maybe we'd name the episode "The Thing, Not a Thing." I thought that was such a good statement about faith. It's the thing, not a thing. And we combine that with some of your great commentary about managing a good, trusting customer relationship. And I think we've hopefully provided a lot of value to the people who are listening or watching. So, Paul, I really appreciate you joining and opening up and sharing and making time for this. I think we've have some very interesting conversations.
Yeah, definitely appreciate your insights, Paul. We love talking to you, and we love your business mind and your commitment to service. So thanks for joining us and lending that. And for those of you tuning in, thank you for your time. If you like this episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you can catch more in the future. And if you want to know more, check out libertyspenders.com. The best thing to do there is you can play with our Liberty Access Multiplier AI tool. We're pretty proud of it. It'll ask you questions, make some recommendations, and it'll even generate a cool video from AI version of Kurt and Kristen. So be sure to check it out, libertyspenders.com. And thanks again for your time. Until next time.